Coming up on June 5th, in Eagle River, the NRG Media Northwoods family of radio stations and Trig Food and Drug pleased to present the Little River Band in concert at the Derby Track Expo Hall. And this is a band that's been around nearly 40 years, and one of the guys that's been riding that high for 30 of them is Wayne Nelson, who joins us. Thanks for taking some time today.
It is my pleasure. It's good to talk to you.
First of all, it's hard to avoid talking about the past because, let's face it, you originally hooked up in, 1980. You rode along for about 16 years, took a break, rejoined 14 years ago, and you're still at it.
Still at it. Yes, that's the summation of the calendar. It's been a very interesting ride, and it's an interesting situation with the band. I don't know of another band that has wholesale, one at a time, changed members and still kept going and so on and so forth. But when Little River Band formed, bands were already breaking up, and there was already legal fights going on. And the band, our charter was, you come in, if you decide to leave, or everybody decides that you need to leave, however it works, then you leave, and the name and the trademark and the band and the music and its history stays with the people that are still there doing it. And every time somebody wanted to go, the people in the band were still eager to make new music and keep going. And so we said, we're sorry you're leaving, but we'll find someone to replace you and keep going. I now am the thread back to those days when the founding members were there. We all performed together for a few years before they started to go, and the energy now in the band. This lineup's been together longer than any of the founding members were in the band, in a row and together. So we found this consistency and this energy for the band. And the ride doesn't feel like 35 years. It's fresh. We've got new music out now. We've got a new CD out, and the show is spontaneous and fun for the crowd. And it's just like we're kids, I always thought from the neck up, I'm still 29 years old.
There you go. Now, having said all that, you've got a birthday coming up in just over a month, and you're sneaking up on retirement age. It's said that the band kind of goes as Wayne Nelson goes. Is that true?
Well, that's the first I've heard that phrase, but you know what? You're going to have to ask the rest of the band. I don't know whether that's the way they feel or not, because the circumstances are still the same. If I was to say I'm leaving, then I leave with my guitar and my suitcase.
Right.
If somebody wanted to carry on, they would be free to carry on.
Now,
the thread back to 1979 and 1980 would be broken, but we've created new threads. So somebody might want to carry on. I wouldn't say anything that black and white myself.
All right. Now, this band, as you've mentioned, has been around more than most. Still continues to churn out music that people want to listen to. Now, more than 30 musicians have been part of this band since the beginning, but that sound is nearly exact. How important is staying with those Australian roots to you and Little River Band?
The Australian roots are part of the band's history, but not necessarily part of the band's sound. This band was created with people who admired the Hollies and the Beatles and the Beach Boys and the other great vocal bands of the time, the Bee Gees, being another, bunch of Aussies.
Mm-hmm.
The sound of the band is important. The history of the band being Australian, I have to be honest, was never really an essential part to Australians. It was another band. It was a good band, and there was a moment in the sun. But the truth of the matter is that the uniqueness of the band being from Australia was so much more important to the rest of the world. Koala bears and wallabies and stuff were part of the entourage in the early days, and the accent was unique to people around the world, and it was definitely a novel. And I don't mean a novelty in a bad way. It was new. It was fresh. But to Australians, Little River Band was actually kind of a light band compared to AC/DC and Midnight Oil and the Angels and bands like that. So again, there was respect, but there wasn't this mad thing about Little River Band in Australia. It was much more a Germany, U.S., Canada phenomenon. By leaps and bounds, the success of the band was more in those areas because of the songs and because of the sound of the band. That's why the sound of the band is so important. And whenever somebody new came in, and still to this day, if somebody did, the first thing they got to do is be able to step up to a mic. All five of us sing like they're lead singers, and the mix is put out front like a horn section. And that and guitar harmonies are the essence of the band's sound. We keep trying to write songs that are about life and about people and relate to people that way. And those are the core elements of the band. So those are things that are identifiable, and to somebody who's been there for 35 years, you kind of know when somebody's got it or doesn't have it, and you just keep looking for the right people.
Right. Now, do you ever get the chance, or do you even want to catch up with the other guys, the founders of the group?
Would I like to catch up with the founders of the group?
Well, with Glenn,
yes.
With Beebe, with Graham, any one of those guys.
Glenn, Beebe, Graham, Derek. I traveled with Derek he was the drummer in the band, drummer, bass player. That relationship is tighter than the other relationships in the band. Would I like to in a idealistic kind of I'm an old hippie, so yeah, I would like to have that be a friendly relationship, and we could exchange, stories and talk about what's happened to our lives since it all unraveled. They have been so, number one, litigious. They've tried things that they knew by contract they weren't supposed to do. Number one, but number two, I just have to tell the truth here. They've lied. They've told mistruths about the situation. They've cast us as, that we stole things from them, that we, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's not a warm and fuzzy relationship. And it didn't come from our side. We were the ones that continued on. It came from their side when they decided, move over, we're going to break our contractual agreement and we're going to come back. So no, the short answer is I don't have any need to reach out any further than what has already happened. And that's just, it's not a pleasant thing, but it's the way it's turned out.
Right. We're talking with Wayne Nelson, the elder statesman, if you will, of the Little River Band. And we're bringing the band to Eagle River in June. Now, when you look at the success of the songs like Reminiscing, Lady, Cool Change, a bunch of others, do you find it hard to break in new music, or do you rest on your laurels and stick with what you've got to get you today? You kind of alluded to that already.
Well, every time we make new music, whether it's got label support like this new CD does, or whether it was just because it was time for us to write and make new music because that's what we're supposed to do, it keeps things fresh. It keeps creativity flowing. Whenever we do that, we know that the history of the band is looking over our shoulder. And historically, Little River Band was never a band that was allowed to break out of its boundaries. Like, if you look at the Police, or you look at other acts that changed their sound, the Eagles changed their sound.
Certainly.
They went into the midstream of pop and back out, dipped in and out, so on and so forth. Other bands have been allowed to experiment. Paul Simon gets to do whatever he wants. Little River Band's been, when we tried to step outside of our lanes, it did not go over well. We had 2 CDs in the mid-'80s that were very strong, but they weren't in the zone that Little River Band had set up, and they were rejected. So there's 2 things going on when we put new music on the stage. We want it to fit. We don't want it to be where they get up to go out and get a beer. You know what I mean?
Yes, I do.
And that's happening with this CD, and with prior CDs as well. Because of that, the vocals are heavy, the guitar harmonies are heavy, and the stories are there for people to grab onto.
Now, it's interesting that you say that because some of the guys with the group hail from Nashville, and that's kind of prompted you to dip your toes into music with a more country flavor, like You Dream I'll Drive, which you sing lead on. Now, you've had groups like Exile, entertainers Darius Rucker, Sheryl Crow, crossing over, charting. Any plans to expand that?
Plans, no. We made the record. As a matter of fact, the record label and I discussed which Little River band are we going to focus on here for this new CD? If you guys are going to be invested and promote this record, you need to feel attached to it as well. So we'll do this together. You tell us which Little River band you want. Do you want Reminiscing and Lady, or do you want Night Owls and Lonesome Loser? They went for the more AOR, 80s kind of sound from Loser and Night Owls and et cetera. So that's what we set out to do with the new CD, both in terms of writing and in terms of listening to other material around. Because, look, we've been around for a long time. We opened it up to say other writers in Nashville, of which there are incredible writers, could have a storyline that we wouldn't even think of telling. And as long as it fit with our age and our career at almost 40 years, then why would we be so dumb as not to record a great song? And we found great songs. We recorded it in Nashville, and some of the guys live in Nashville, but we did not set out to make a country record by any means. You're right about You Dream I'll Drive. It's bluesier. It's got that country, get behind the wheel and get out of town and get out into the country feel to it.
When you're hitting the open road with four wheels that want to roll, and I mean the only thing it's missing is pedal steel.
There you go. And but to our intent, had we intended to do a country record, our guitar player in the band is a country record producer and a session player. We could have added pedal steel or harmonica or anything to it to take it in that direction with very little effort. It would have been an instant sound that would have taken it country. But we were looking for it to be bluesy and funky and fun. Country radio came to us and said, that song would really work in these markets. Let us promote this and let's see what happens. And so far it's doing well. And what somebody described to me about country was, country used to be a 2-lane road.
Right. And
you had to keep your wheels on that 2-lane road in order to be successful. Country now is a 8 lanes both ways super highway. And Little River Band has been riding along here doing their vocal heavy, guitar heavy sound. And bands like Little Big Town and Rascal Flatts and so on and so forth are now doing that big vocal heavy thing as well, stacked vocals right in your face. And the guy said, you didn't do anything different, but the road expanded and we just took over your lane.
Interesting.
And it's an interesting analogy, but if you listen to the record, like I say, we didn't set out to do a country record. It's just that country radio is where people are going to listen to melodies and stories and whatever. And we got kind of swept up in the traffic. I have no idea what's going to happen with that, and we're grateful for the airplay, and people are mentioning it, and people are hearing You Dream I'll Drive, and they're lighting up at the shows because they're hearing their hits, but they're also hearing something they just heard on the radio, and it feels like 1981 to them. So it's a very cool vibe. But are we going to try to go on stage with Willie and Toby Keith and Brad Paisley? No, that's not us. It's just a time where radio decided, country decided to play some of our music, and there's a lot of respect for the band in Nashville over the years with songs like Lady, Reminiscing, and so on. So it's just we're just in a good spot where people are hearing us again.
Now, aside from joining us in Eagle River in June, what's the future hold for the band?
Well, we're only one song deep into the new CD, and there are very strong songs to follow it up. We're still talking about what we're going to do in regard to the summer and the fall for this CD. The label has an option to do another one, which will take us well into our 40th year as a band. So our touring schedule is heavy now as we start talking about the fact that this band is going to be 40 years old next year. I think it's going to draw a different kind of attention. So I would say that we're locked into being on the bus or being in an airport until at least 2016. And, throats and health and so on and so forth, all going well, knock on wood, we should be, there's no reason to stop touring until we physically can't do the job. And that's been my benchmark. I mean, you mentioned, yes, I'm, on June 5, I'll be 4 days into being 64 years old. And if I can't do it, then that's when I have to say I can't do it and turn it over to somebody else, or it stops, whatever that choice is for all the guys in the band. But right now I don't see an end to the road. It just stretches out in front of us, and it's kind of open to whatever we want to do with it.
Now here finally is the really big question. In the publicity shot of the band, why aren't you in the middle?
No one has asked yet. That is really funny. No one has asked yet. Well, there's for two reasons. Number one, I have never wanted to be the guy in the middle. I have always wanted to be the bass player. And, the way things went, yes, I sang lead, and yes, I can sing, and so on and so forth, but my passion is to play bass and stand next to the drummer. That's just never going to happen again. But we were lined up for the shot, and we just kind of fell in, and I had grabbed the jacket and walked in there, and it was like Chris was standing there in the middle, and Chris wears glasses. He didn't have his glasses on, and I just went, yeah, let's take one like this. And nothing else came out anywhere near the spirit of the band as that picture. It was just one of those spontaneous moments where that's the way we were standing. And I appreciate what you're saying. I like other people being able to step forward. I love putting the guys' pictures up there. And, I think their story is and should be as interesting as my 35 years. There's a bunch of history there, but these guys are great players. They're great people. They do great stuff. We do great stuff together, and I'm all about getting them out there. I guess I spent so much time in a band that was faceless and nobody cared where anybody stood, and that still rings true for me. We just kind of step up and take a picture.
Wayne Nelson, the Little River Band, June 5th, Derby Expo Hall, Eagle River. Thanks for joining us today. We look forward to the show.
It's been great talking to you, man. That you hit some notes nobody else hit, man. That was very cool. Can't wait to get up there. God, thaw this place out so when we get there, it's not. What'd you say? 18 inches of ice on the water.
As when we're recording this, yeah, but by the time you get here, hopefully it should be gone by then.
Good. Turn on the heat lamps. We'll see you in June.
All righty.